All right, it's Friday, August 26th. Welcome to episode 39 of Pass the Mic. Mike Pehote here. Joining me again online via Zoom, the newly updated Zoom, Mike Gervasi.
You're gonna have to give me a second here. This is gonna take a minute. All right.
Warm up those vocal cords.
Yep. All right, here we go. Now you're caught up in the undertow. You never knew a man could sink so low. But now you know, because you're John Doe in a black bag and tag on your toe. I built the house. I felt the pain. You victimized, but got no one to blame. Mr. P, I killed two birds with one stone there, Mike. Okay, so here's stone number one, bird number one. Avid listener, Joe Burguy, most notably the better half of the Burguy marriage, Bill Burguy, last seen losing to me by 5 minutes at the 5K.
We're quoting race times.
Jill requested Yacht Rock.
Okay.
So
another series. We're getting a lot of plugs to SiriusXM on this show.
Yes. So undertow, a nautical reference there, even though the singer didn't mean that. So that's my shout out to her. Now, the second thing is for you. Who is that?
I'm guessing they don't appear on Yacht Rock based upon. It's a band. It's a group, I should say.
It is a group. Would you like a hint?
Yeah, give me a hint, because I'm about to say no. Go ahead, give me a hint, because I have no clue.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm just guessing randomly. I'm just guessing. So
guess randomly because Max Bailey has. This is the other bird. Max Bailey requested me to include something in the song to see if you could pick it up.
No, and I didn't. I have no clue. As is no surprise. Just who is it? Let's in the.
If it was Winger singing, I'm sure you would know.
I don't know Winger either. So.
If it was House of Pain,
okay.
In the lyrics, I built the house, I felt the pain.
Okay, so there's.
Hoping you would get that.
Yeah, and that's our famous. It's on our playlist.
Yeah, I was going to try to come up with a way of doing that as our hints, but
yeah, and on our playlist, maybe with the new scoreboards in, we'll be rocking that out. Well, welcome again, another week. Going to get caught up on feedback. A little feedback. You sort of started already. The Sims race was a huge success. Many of our listeners took part. You did a good job. We plugged the podcast. The Dumb Owls had the sound system going, and as you came across the finish line, I plugged the.
Oh my thunder, man!
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right.
The system did get a little overheated there. Dr. Rice was getting a little nervous, so I bailed him out.
For me, okay, so I did pretty well. I mean, my goal was under 30 because I'll get into that a little bit later. Why? But I lost miserably to Chris Payton. That hurts. Although he
placed in his age group.
He did. He was a star runner in high school, so for me to beat him, it would be pretty tricky.
And you're recovering.
Yeah, which I'll talk about in a little bit.
Okay, I don't want to steal any more thunder, but it was a great day. Kids had fun. My son ran in the race. It was a great event as always. Shout out to Bill Stevenson and his crew, and thank you to all of our listeners that took part. We had many listeners that took part in the race, all for a good cause. Just beat the storms that day, thankfully. So, got in and out there. It seems like anytime we do an episode lately, either on the day we record or the day we release, something connects to it. So who knows what's going to happen, but I think it was the day we recorded about our shortage of teachers. The Honorable Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida had a little press conference. I don't know if you caught any of that, where he had great things to say about public educators in his method of solving the education crisis. Actually, I'm just factually stating, he came in and he gave his plan for getting backups, and then basically said that teachers that are going through the current education programs are no better than anybody else, and they're sort of, and his famous, what's his favorite word right now? I believe it's woke. I guess all educators are in this boat, I guess, that he sees. And so it seemed we dropped this way of trying to recruit people, and then that same day he comes out and decides to drop a press conference on all of us that have worked hard and earned our certificates through the core subjects. Like, you don't just go to school. Actually, when you say that most of your classes were in your actual field instead of education classes, right? Like, I mean, there's very few curriculum classes. I mean, it's mostly you take a few of these hours in like a curriculum, a special ed course, an assessment course, and then a classroom management course. But most of my hours, they said you need to go take all these hours in lit, English, composition, history classes. So you're
X amount of hours, and then you have to pass the
skills test. And the skills test is 100% on the subject matter. It's not about teaching. So, and I don't know if things have changed. I could be wrong. Maybe
Right.
Programs have
It's been a
changed,
while.
and now you're only taking fewer hours in your subject, and you have a lot more education hours. I don't know. I personally think the way it was set up is fine. There's only so many classes you can teach about education, right? Like there's only so many things you can talk about. It's
Right.
more important to learn the material. So that happened on the day we happened. I think it was the day we recorded. If I go back and look, I'm not going to watch it.
I think you're right.
I'm not going to go back and rewatch it because it wasn't the most enjoyable press conference to watch as an educator. So
It's lovely being insulted.
yes, our program is was worthless. My Mike of the week. Let's see if you can guess this. He was born in Chicago. I believe in past episodes you've mentioned a cast member of his show as maybe one of your. I don't know if we discussed like who he liked growing up on a TV show, but I thought this was someone from his TV show was on there. Born in Chicago, was a huge hit sitcom dad in the 80s. Okay. Has also, and I'm always going to throw in a Law and Order reference, appeared in Law and Order season 10. I believe he was like the criminal, might have been an attorney. I don't know, just one of those reoccurring guest stars. But a lot of big star came from his 80s TV show. I'll give you his first name, because if I give you the last name, you're going to know. Steven was his name on the TV show. He's the dad. Michael Gross, Stephen Keaton, you got it. I was giving it straight. Michael Gross from Family Ties is my Michael of the week.
What a good show.
Basically after Family Ties was like a bit actor, still alive, 75 years of age.
Wow.
So yeah, and the last thing I saw, he's been in things since that at Law and Order, but he's like just basically like a single part here and there. He's in an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm, stuff like that. Just appears here and there. So
very good. That show was really, in a lot of ways, Cliff Menser and I talk about this. There are some episodes on that show that could really be applied to U.S. history classes. They tackled some pretty hard subjects. So yeah, I really, really love that show.
And a major premise of the show, the parents were liberals, right? Like 60s liberals, and their son Michael was a Reagan conservative. Yes. They had no clue what
Courtney Cox was his girlfriend on the show later on. Also, I got to give a shout out. Tom Pack sent me some text messages about pizza places he likes.
Oh, okay.
He did agree with Roma's. He also mentioned it's a little scary in there. It's kind of funny thinking back. But two places, BC's.
Yes, I've never had it, but it's really hyped up on Downriver and Friends and in the Downriver area in Lincoln Park, I believe.
Lincoln Park, okay, that's right, yeah. And then JJ's. Again, two places that I am not familiar with.
I'm not familiar with. Another one that's like a Downriver, like sort of is Dell's and Trenton. I've never had it. My mom swears by it, but that was another one that sort of slipped through our.
Yeah, another Downriver one. I think it's still open. Frank's in Wyandotte.
Okay, yeah. They were the ones that way back only had the curly pepperoni. So
yeah,
now everyone does.
They still insist. As far as from what I remember, you had to pay cash. That's always
holy cow.
Although I think there's a couple other places that maybe we mentioned. I'm not certain of this, so maybe I shouldn't even have said that about Frank's because it's been a long time since.
Well, whatever. I mean, I don't know. That's a hard way to do things nowadays, but there are very few places. I don't know. I mean, I don't carry much cash anywhere. So, and most of these, and if anything, places are going the opposite. Like I think like a lot of these stadiums are. Like Cedar Point is card only, and like if you don't have a card, you have to go process a card and get cash. Go through a machine. So that's I wouldn't be surprised if we get more and more to that anyway. So
right.
All right. So we figure this is our last week off. I did actually went in. You went in, and I worked a few days this week, so we're really sort of blending that line. And we start next week. We start back next week. Monday, we're putting on a new hire orientation, and then Tuesday is our first day back to report to work. So I wanted to we'll sort of wrap up the summer and just ask what were your highlights of your summer. We sort of shared some of these throughout the episodes, but maybe this is your chance to like highlight a couple of things that were like the best part of your summer as our free time is about to close up and it's back to the real world. So what were some of your highlights?
Yeah, so always it's time to recharge your batteries, so to speak. But for me, okay, so last summer, I mean, I 2020 into 2021, I really, on a personal level, went through a lot. And one of the big things of me dealing with stress is exercise. And so the summer of 2020, I picked up tennis, and I absolutely love the sport. I wish I could be better at it. Running, basketball, riding my bike. These are things I really like to do that helps me unwind. And in early July of 2021, I tore my Achilles And so that effectively eliminated all of those things. And my way of dealing with, or my ways of dealing with stress was null and void for the summer. So the highlight of my summer this year was being able to get back to doing those things. And it's really funny because I swore up and down, Mike, that I would never play basketball again. I was pretty certain I wouldn't play tennis again. I was 100% certain I wasn't going to run. But you know what? That was recency bias. I feel very good now. I know that I'm probably never going to be fully 100% with this, simply because of when it happened to me. And, people mentioned Cam Akers, the running back of Los Angeles Rams, right? Los Angeles, how he recovered. He's in 6 or 7 months, he's a professional athlete that's like 23, 24. I am neither of those things. I'm 44 and not a professional athlete. But just being able to do these things again was easily the highlight of my summer. In fact, I played tennis last night. I'm playing tomorrow. I really love doing it. So that's my highlight, being able to get back into doing those things I couldn't do before.
Well, yeah, and excellent. And congratulations on the, there goes Chloe. Congratulations on the performance in the race. I mean, that takes a lot. I mean, just to run in the 5K as it is, and you went above and beyond and did a great job finishing. So my kudos to you, especially coming off that surgery. It's amazing. And again, we talked about this before in previous episodes. What these pro athletes, they're amazing. And remember, it used to be back in the day in ACL, you were done for a year. There's guys that come. I remember, and again, we talked about them, like Rod Woodson was the first guy. He went out in the early, and he somehow played in the Super Bowl, and that was like a miracle back then.
It was.
And now it's like the norm. And I mean, part of it is like the workouts and the conditioning that these guys go through now. It's nothing like, Len Dawson passed away this morning. I don't know if you saw that. Okay. And there's the famous photo. It's always on social media of him in the locker room at halftime of one of the early Super Bowls that they're in with like a cigarette, smoking a cigarette sitting there. Yeah, think about how things have changed in the era of the pro athlete. Like there's Len Dawson went out and won a Super Bowl, and there he is at halftime, enjoying a smoke during his downtime in the locker room. So, my summer, I talked about it in the earlier episodes. The road trip we took was unbelievable. Looking back and reflecting on it, I still haven't had enough time to like go back and look through all my pictures. A lot of people have asked me about it, and I talked about it. And looking back, I just really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed, especially being up in the Wyoming, Montana, Idaho area. Like I had to take the whole trip and lock it in because I went to so many places. And Denver was, but Denver was a nice town, but it was still just a city, and I go back and forth between what I like. But like those 3 nights in that cottage in Idaho, just a totally different lifestyle that we're not used to here. And that's definitely the highlight. I didn't mind all the driving. It really wasn't a relaxing vacation just because there's so much to it. Then I did a smaller road trip when I got back, which was nice because I was able to go with my dad, my cousin John, and my uncle Joel. My dad and his brother are both from Pittsburgh. They went back. We visited my aunt, his sister. And my uncle's getting up there in age, and he wanted to just sort of, I don't want it to be morbid, but he's like, this might be the last time I come back. And so it was just a nice bonding trip that I was able to experience with my dad and my cousin, enjoy some good Pennsylvania beers and some good food at my family's restaurant out there in Monessen. Laida's delicious if you're ever down there south of the city of Pittsburgh. But sometimes it's what we always say, it's the unplanned things that you don't, that are sometimes the best. And last week I took my daughter Chloe to a doctor's appointment, and we decided to go out for breakfast afterwards. And it was just her and I. This is her last week. We move her in. The day this comes out, we'll be moving her in up in Ann Arbor. That's probably was the last breakfast that, we're all going out to dinner tomorrow, Thursday night. We're recording this on Wednesday, but that's probably the last little breakfast I have with her, meal I have with her, just her and I as a child, as someone that's no longer, that she's now making her own choices. And we didn't make a big deal. I didn't talk about it at all then. It was just breakfast. We talked and like we would normally any breakfast, and I'm just reflecting on it now. And the value it had for me and how thankful I was to have that time. And it's going to be tough. I'm going to have down to 1 kid, and I think it's going to be tough on my son, Nate, but we'll get through it. She's close. And, I got my U of M dad stuff, and I'm ready to, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I'm allowed to like be mad if they lose. I don't know. It's going to be a weird feeling this season. We're going to get in. segueing right into that, unless you have anything
Perfect.
else you want to highlight.
No, go ahead.
Our overrated, underrated this week is college football. It's sort of like the soft opening week this week. They're just talking about it. I think there's a game, there a Big Ten game like overseas or something, or
something going on this weekend.
Yeah. And then of course Pitt, West Virginia, the backyard brawl is back coming up on the 1st. So overrated, underrated college football. What do you got for your overrated?
Yeah,
we have not discussed these at all. So
we have not discussed them at all. I have a feeling we're going to be the same. If nothing else, we're going to agree. I know you'll agree with my overrated. Every football season, and it's kind of getting. I think college football has a little bit of an issue, and maybe this NIL stuff, which in a lot of ways is changing, and one could argue ruining a lot of college football. But the one thing that it could happen is it could be somewhat of an equalizer. I love that Deion Sanders has called out, Nick Saban and stuff like that. But, you get past the normal Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson most seasons. Outside of those 14, everything else is kind of a toss-up at that point. So for me, the preseason rankings are the most overrated part of college football, whether it's, anointing somebody with the Heisman early. And again, I almost want to eliminate those 4 schools from the discussion because Alabama is just ridiculous. Their recruiting classes and 4 preseason first-team All-Americans. Because the talent gap, as we saw in the Michigan Bowl game against Georgia, is just immense, right? Yep. Georgia's defense was incredible. I've never seen a defense like that. But, for me, just the preseason rankings, and it does have an impact on the college football season. Now, you can make a case, just win your games, you don't have to worry about the rankings and blah, blah, blah. But it does have an impact, partially because of schedule, partially because the conference is controlled so much. But it does have an impact on everything. So to me, the preseason rankings, I just don't. I think they're ridiculous. So that's
and I had that, and I crossed it off, and I switched mine. And I'm probably going to offend some people with this,
I think I know where you're going. I have a
feeling. The school in South Bend is overrated. Notre Dame is overrated as yes. That's what I'm. Yes, wow. That is. And again, I'm not saying they're awful or bad or like Eastern Michigan. They're obviously a good program, but this is not 1986 anymore. They act like they still deserve their own network. The media world has changed. The sport has changed. And I've talked to you about this all the time. I think the Big Ten does a disservice to themselves by playing those games against them. If you want to play us, join the conference. And then even the ACC, who is groveling to them and saying you're sort of in, you can play basketball here. You can play a couple of our teams. They're not, now if that was current Alabama and they were an independent, I get it. If that was like those schools you mentioned, right? If that was current Ohio State, you are no longer worthy of being able to dictate what is going on, and again, they have great history. They're a good team right now. I think they're probably ranked right like in the top 25, but so is like Michigan State, and so are plenty of Big Ten teams or ACC teams or SEC teams. But again, this is, the whole famous NBC contract was sort of like, oh, look at this. Well, everyone's on TV now. So this is, Michigan on TV every weekend. The most minimal game, they're on TV too. May not be the same network. Heck, the Big Ten has their own network. So who cares? And talk about networks, the money that was just signed and like what CBS is throwing around to get these Big Ten schools, again, overrated. And I think they're overrated in their own minds. Because they go around and they say, we're not joining the Big Ten. And eventually what's going to happen is, and you saw what the Big Ten already did, said, okay, fine. USC, UCLA, come on in. The SEC is doing it. And eventually one day they're going to have to shut up and join somebody because it's just going to get to that point. And
so first off, I wonder what a few of our loyal listeners who are Notre Dame fans are going to think about this. I guess my counter to that is, first off, I agree with you 100%. It's absurd that they haven't joined yet. And the Big Ten should come to some sort of gentleman's agreement. We're not going to play you, but they still must have something, whether it's ratings. And I can't look this up at the moment, but the Big Ten still does count them.
I understand that, but if you ask kids, ask anyone even in their 30s or 20s. I mean, the last people that know of Notre Dame being this power are our age. Like if you go ask,
true.
I bet if I ask some people if you know where it is, unless because I gave it away into South Bend, Indiana, they don't even know what state it's in.
That's fair. That's fair.
That's my thing. I mean, again, I'm not saying, again, overrated doesn't mean bad.
Right.
It means overrated. So that's my overrated. No offense to any of our big and our Hall of Famer that coaches there.
Yeah.
So what is your underrated for college football?
So I've mentioned this before when we had the maestro on. The atmosphere of a college football game is absolutely second to none. I'm not one of these people. I watch both Saturday and Sunday football. I'm not one of these people that doesn't like the NFL or anything like that. I enjoy watching a lot of NFL games, although, as I mentioned before, there are some really bad games. But to me, the atmosphere is what sets college apart from the pros. And what's the biggest part of that atmosphere is the band. I think the bands make the game, not make the game more exciting, but I think the bands certainly help the atmosphere. It's, you think about what you hear in between plays. It's almost like it doesn't even register how often they play during games. I'm sure that you can think of you mentioned Notre Dame. I can hear their fight song in my head right now, so I'm going with the bands. I think it's such a major part of the atmosphere of college football game.
Yep, that's a good call. And like you said, I can hear the band in the old EA Sports video game. Like that was a major part of the game, like the fight songs, and that's coming back supposedly next year, I think, or 24. I'm not sure, but that's a great part, and a great part of high school too. The maestro. Shout out to the maestro, one of our guests from earlier this season. My underrated, and this might ruffle some feathers too, because there seems to be a big divide on this, but my underrated aspect of college football is the 4-team playoff, the 4-team, and only having it as 4 teams. I think that's what creates these great games in the regular season that the NFL doesn't even have. That they might have it late in the season or middle of the season if there's a close. I mean, we never experience it here in Detroit because we're out of the race or whatever. But think about regular season NFL games and regular season college games. A lot of these NFL, there's very rarely a make or break game unless you get into that last week of the season that sort of thing. But in college football, you can have these make or break games. Michigan, Ohio State. In the Big House last year at the end of the year, Michigan State, Ohio State, and they also already have the conference championship games, which sort of are a quasi first round anyway. I think of the year that Michigan State made it to the playoff. That game against Iowa was much closer than anyone thought, and now Iowa wouldn't have moved on, but State would not have moved on. You know what I mean? So I think the 4-team playoff. And I know it's going to, and I'm also a realist. I know it's going to be gone. It's going to be gone because of money. And eventually, whether it be 8 or 12 or whatever it is, there's going to be a day where the colleges just realize we're missing out on way too much money. But in reality, I don't think it's needed at all. And if you just look at the semifinal games almost every year, semifinal games are usually not even that close anyway. So what's the big deal? What difference is 5 and 6 and 7 going to be if 2 or 3 and 4 couldn't beat 1 and 2 anyway?
That's fair.
You know what I mean? So I think it's, again, is this meaning that the other alternative's bad? No, I'm just saying I think that's an underrated aspect that college football has over the pros, over a lot of the other sports. That holy cow, these regular season games mean a ton. We've seen it in the SEC, we see it in the Big Ten. Those are the two where you really seem to see it. But I'll even like in the Pac-10 back before they got broken up in small, there'd be some early games there, or somehow Oregon would lose the Stanford, and then that's a big deal. And if Oregon loses to Stanford, but you're still taking 8 teams in, and Oregon wins the rest of their games, then that game didn't really mean anything. So
no, and looking back in retrospect on Michigan's season last year, it did make. They had to scratch and claw to win in Nebraska. Nebraska last year found every way to lose when it mattered. And, then they went to Penn State and, same thing. And so it makes those games. I mean, you can make a case that the NFL, as it turns out, a lot of teams miss by a game or make it by game. But the college football games, because of that system, the big schools can afford one hiccup. Little smaller ones cannot, and it makes every game essentially a playoff game. So yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, and like in the NFL too, it's very rare that you see what the Steelers did the year they made it to the Super Bowl and won here in Detroit, where they were that last seed that sort of snuck in and scratched and clawed. I mean, that's like there's always going to be exceptions to all these things, but normally in the NFL, the Chiefs can afford a hiccup. The Chiefs can afford a hiccup against a team. The Rams can afford a hiccup. The Rams, wasn't there a game they got blown out in last year? And I remember everyone was like, that's totally not a problem. So that's our overrated, underrated. We'd love to hear what other people think. All you college football fans that are ready for your season to kick off and start up, you're right around the corner. What is your hot mic for the week?
So I shared this with you. I found this to be so interesting. I just read a book on the history of the national anthem. And without dispute, I didn't know. I mean, you can make a case of obviously what your opinion is. Without dispute, in terms of commercial value, the Whitney Houston national anthem at Super Bowl 25 was the most popular in our history.
There's been like polls and voting on that.
Yeah, like it made the pop charts, and it was
Okay.
In terms of listens, in terms like, and it continues to be used at a lot of games to this day, high school stadiums. If I'm not mistaken, we've used it in the past here and there.
The Rivals Professional Football League demands it.
Or do they really?
Yes.
I was in high school. That was our national anthem before our basketball games. So I read up on that one a little bit. It was really interesting. Paul Tagliabue, the commissioner at the time of the NFL, actually called Whitney's people and asked her to have a more traditional anthem out of fear, because it was during the first Gulf War, or first time George H.W. Bush was president, first time we went into Iraq, and the patriotism was at an all-time high. George H.W. Bush's approval ratings at the time were above 90, and just the patriotism was
everybody
incredible.
was happy. Everybody was happy and loved each other.
Yes, and asked her to kind of tone it down a little bit and do a more traditional version of it, and her people said no, this is the one we're doing, because he had gotten wind of what she was doing at rehearsal, and asked her, and they said no, we're doing it this way. And as it turns out, it's really one of the most incredible anthems. To me, there's two that really stick out: hers and Marvin Gaye.
Marvin Gaye,
the All-Star game, just incredible, and both are much less traditional, but they I think they nail it. And when I watch her do it, and I've shown different times in class for different reasons, I've shown that anthem. We really lost a national treasure with her voice when she passed, I believe within the last decade. And I just found that to be so interesting that the commissioner of the NFL asked her to tone it down a little bit, because who knows, if they had said yes, who knows what would have come of that anthem.
Paul Tagliabue, great commissioner, one of the great commissioners in the history of sport, but also that story does not seem unbelievable at all, because he seemed to be pretty straight to the point. Pretty, I think he's the kind of guy that would have his burger plain and, that sort of thing. He didn't seem to be like but you got the job done, it is what it is. Yeah. So my hot mic take is that Detroit making national headlines. Did you see the stories about the Belle Isle slide that opened up?
Yeah. Oh,
so man. I want to give a shout out to our home state and our home city. Belle Isle, of course, is run by the state of Michigan. It's a state park at this point. Was run by the city of Detroit for years. Those images. They made the Jimmy Fallon show. They made every sort of. It is just an amazing, hysterical view. I think there's a local rap artist made a big song about people going down the side of the, and I just look back, I go, that was what everything was like when we were growing up. Like, I don't know if like all of a sudden people got put into a time machine like back to the 1980s and said, here it is, go down this and survive at your best. Those videos of those people, and I don't know if they like sprayed it with Pam or. I noticed other ones. Someone put a side by side with one in Wisconsin. It was like covered in plastic, and there's all kind of barricades and not the Detroit.
Was just so common.
I mean, people were getting air. Yes. I mean, just a point of pride for the city of Detroit as always. I'm like, this is the way we grew up with stuff. So that's my hot mic take. I don't know if anyone's been down to Belle Isle. My wife forwarded me a story that a coworker looked up and found, and it was and again, I don't know how true it is. Because who knows what you see online, but it was a story about that the slide itself there's a murder back in when it was Detroit run back in the day, that someone that runs the slide felt he got ripped off and he went down. I don't even know. I'll have to look it up and see if I can find it and put it on the Facebook page. But I think rides were 15 cents a ride at that point. I don't know what they are now. I don't know if that's part of your. So be safe if you go down there. To any of our listeners heading down to the slide. What are your plans for your last weekend before heading back to work?
Oh, my travel soccer, Mike. That's so I'm going to be.
Oh man,
a couple times. Yeah. How about you?
We're moving Chloe up Friday, like I said.
Yes.
So that will be good. And then other than that, my weekend's pretty open. Like I said, I'm probably getting ready for that new member task force. We are going to have the on September 10th. I'm going to send the invite out. If you want another 5K, no charge, the Marauder Pride run on the Metro Park course for our cross country team. That's going to be open to our staff and alumni, and of course our teams are going to be running in it. So parents of cross country kids. So please enjoy. All right.
Plug.
All right, buddy. Have a good weekend. We'll see you next week. I'll see you later at the game.
Yeah, see you at the game.
All right.